Lord help us, Tampa. You've been extremely on time. Whatever you're doing with your alarms there has been phenomenal. It's been a great success. Kelsey Brackett, it's been a while. Life got crazy. I totally understand. Do not even worry about it. It's good to see you. It's very good to see you. Well, we'll wait a few minutes like normal. Let people file in. Weird time tonight, I know. We had a birthday party, and then we did Pilates with kittens this evening, which was pretty great. Hey, Ghost. So eventful day, odd time. I guess while we wait, in case you haven't seen, in the announcements, I guess first thing, if you're in the Discord and you don't get alerts, please just do it, because the only time I ever use it is for things that would actually affect your life in terms of being a part of the group. I don't do anything else. You won't get notified when I post a YouTube video or anything stupid. It's important things only. So if you don't get alerts when I post in the announcements, go to channels and roles, and then come down here to important announcement, notification, highly recommend, blah, blah, blah. Just hit yes, because then you'll get notified when I post here in the announcements. And this is important, because this is when I change the time of something, I cancel something, or this, which I want to briefly talk about, was I'm really trying to figure out a third day to stream, because I like to bring back the Thesis podcast where we did the topic discussion. I had to nix it in the summer because we had a bunch of crazy life stuff happen, and we're still having it happen. But I'd like to figure out how to make this work. So this would leave us with 2 Bible studies that require like very little prep for me. Some, but like not a lot. It's manageable. So I'd like to bring back the open discussion topic that we used to do, where every week we posted a poll with topic options, and then everybody voted on the topic to do. And it was just an open discussion. I'd sometimes come with some notes and stuff, and sometimes nothing at all, because it was something we had already talked about somewhere else, and we just like expanded on it. Anyway, long story short, is come to the announcements, vote in the poll. There's some options of days and times. No guarantee, because it'll just be contingent on what my schedule is. But if everybody's like, yeah, that day will not work, and that's the only day that I can do it, then it means right now we can't do it. So I'm hoping we're able to find something that possibly works. So we have 13 votes in there now. If you haven't done it, please go do it. If you're not going to come, please don't vote. That should go without saying. But if you're not like a regular attender to the streams, attendee, don't vote in the polls about what days. It goes without saying, but I feel like I have to say it. Anyway, do that, because I'd really like to start doing something soon, because I miss those discussions. We've had some good discussions recently, and it's really made me miss it. So I'd really like to, if possible, figure out how to bring it back, because it was a lot of fun when we did that. It was a lot of fun. I had a good time, at least. Ruth, Pastora, Mikkel. I know Kelsey's back. Isn't that wild? Well, beautiful. All right, Tiki-Taki. Good to go. Mostly good to go. Cool. God is kind as Patricia, right? That's you, Patricia? I'll figure it out. Hopefully I just didn't make an ass out of myself. I'm pretty sure that's you, though. I'm like 85.5% confident that is you. Guys, let's get Joe our mail address each for today's birthday candy, cake, and souvenirs. Good, Patricia, I got you. The birthday was good, by the way. I saw Rodriguez asked. It was good. It was nice. It was very low key. We don't go crazy on the kids' birthdays. It was fun. It was good. She's happy. That's all that matters. Okay, we have a lot to get through tonight, and I'm normally on my way to bed right now, so we're going to go right into it. Let me turn this down a bit. Alrighty, so Sarah's death and burial, which will be interesting because Rodriguez had brought up a week or so ago that Abraham remarries. And it's just something that I don't think of often. The I believe third wife, right? I don't think of it often. I didn't have it near the top of my mind. until she brought it up, and it made me think about it. And I did a little bit of like refreshing myself after the fact, because it was one of those things I just really didn't think about a lot. And now we're there. So as a put in the back of your head type thing, the discussion of what we were talking about a week ago, now we're going to go through Sarah's death, and then we're going to move shortly to the next wife, Keturah. Yes, Rodriguez. So just something to keep in the back of your head, like something to be logged away as we continue through. I'm really glad you brought that up. And now that's reminding me that I don't have the Discord thing open. So hold on. All right, the Discord voice channel is open, and we're good to go. Yeah, thanks, Ghost. Do the YouTube stuff, guys. The channel is starting to get a little bit of traction. We like cross 3,000 views and stuff. It's slowly burning. But the beginning, obviously, everyone knows is very, very hard. My second class. Yeah, I almost forgot about that bomb you threw on it. Yeah, it was a total bomb. It was not something I ever think about, honestly. All right, so Sarah's death and burial. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. I love the poetic nature of some of the Bible. And Sarah died at Kiriath Arab. Now, Logos has this for that. This place, which may be literally rendered city of Arba, was later named Hebron, which you read about a decent amount in the Bible. So that might jog the memory more so than this name here. Hebron is also mentioned by name in Genesis 13, which we obviously already read. Genesis uses both names here, which it mentions both names here. Is also mentioned here to reflect the updating of the name. A later editor may have added this note for clarity, which I would put a lot of confidence on, because 9 times out of 10, when you see things in brackets, this was a later addition. And it is usually to add clarity. Because if we already knew from previous parts of the Bible, and in some cases later parts, but not in this case, but in this case a previous part, where we knew it by a different name, the authors will often do this where they add context, which is good. It's good. But it's also a note of like, things change. This all wasn't all at once. It wasn't all magic, all context at the same time. The Bible is a very progressively added to text, and it's just something we have to be okay with. So, Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, which we'll talk about in a minute too, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, you'll hear that pronounced 1,000 different ways. I honestly have no idea what the proper way is, and I've even talked to some Jewish people. Hittites is the best I've ever got. Hittites. Does it matter? Not in my opinion. But I'm also terrible with pronunciation, so maybe that's a little bit of cope. Quote, I am a sojourner and a foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burial place, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. Real quick on the Hittites, though, there's not a lot of history to support that they were here, which is one of these interesting things. So as usual, if it's something you care about, trying to really understand biblical history and what and who people are talking about, this culture would be one to look into. You'll read in a lot of commentaries and elsewhere that there just isn't a whole lot to link them to Canaan. At all, in fact. There's almost none. What that means is it leaves the Bible's word here as the only reference, really. I don't know if that's changed in the past 10 years since I did most of the notes from a lot of this, but I find it unlikely. So if somebody finds something that's new or different, I would love to see it. But as far as I know, there's just no connection. Nah, fam, that's Joe. He was way closer to the degree than I was. What degree? Our resident scholar is celebrating Canelio's win. Yeah, I saw you guys talking about it in Discord. I don't even know what's going on there. Is that something happening in Mexico?
I don't know who Canelio is, but it's Canelo.
Canelo? Who is Canelo?
It's a never mind, Joe. It's a boxer, but you're the one who
Oh,
was on
that's right.
doctorate. He looks like you, Joe, but he's
That's right.
Mexican.
So does
That
Conor McGregor. I get that a lot. Conor
Yeah,
McGregor.
but the fact that there's a Mexican who's a ginger,
That's
he's pink
true.
like you and everything. Yeah.
That's true. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, actually, I remember. I read through some of you guys' stuff talking about that you boxed and or did some kind of fighting
Really?
in LA. Yeah, I was reading it this
Even
morning.
though you don't care.
I gave time to read it. I forgot it
That's
was linked
true.
to the
That's true. That's
Canelos. Okay, all right.
true. Okay, sorry.
But yeah, I got a degree. I bailed on the next degree. The city of Troy was a myth for centuries until it wasn't. I feel you though. Right, which is why I'm 100% open-minded to this being absolutely true. It's something we just have to point out. Doesn't mean I'm right at all. It doesn't mean that it's not 100% true. It's just something you're not going to be able to really find like confirmation for. And if somebody does, please let me know. Throw it in Discord and like tag me in it, because it would add a lot of clarity to me, because otherwise it's kind of confusing. But anyway, so you have these people. Before he's dead and said to the Hittites, I'm a sojourner and a foreigner among you. Give me property among you for a burying place, that I may bury my dead out of sight. The Hittites answered Abraham, hear us, my lord. You are a prince of God among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will behold from you his tomb to hinder you from burying your dead. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land. And he said to them, if you are willing that I should bury my dead out of sight, hear me and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar. What Abraham's doing is he's working with the actual people. He's not working with the government, I guess would be a way to say it. And then we'll add clarity here in a minute. So he said to them, if you're willing, I should bury my dead out of sight. Hear me and entreat for me Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah. Again, pronunciation, I don't know. Yours is probably more correct than mine. Which he owns. It is at the end of his field. So Abraham he's not speaking to the actual owner of the land. He's speaking with the people who live there. He's speaking with, quote unquote, the people. And then he said, he may give me the cave of Machpelah. Again, pronunciation, I don't know. I don't follow it. Oh, the boxing. With this cave, there's an interesting note here. So Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Lee were all buried in this cave. And there's notation to chapter 25, 49, and 50 is where that's pulled from. Tradition identifies it with the sacred place of the friend of God, which in Hebrew, I'm not even going to pretend or try to pronounce. But it would be in modern Hebron. So this was a significant place of burial, especially in context of Genesis, but not necessarily yet. We know this because of future data that we haven't read yet. So in storyline hasn't happened yet. But we know that because we understand the full context, because we are very long past the actual writing and living of this. So you may give me the cave of Machpelah, the super, super sacred, interesting, significant place that we know, but hasn't quite developed yet in the actual story, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as property for a burying place. So we're entering into legal agreements. This is the beginning phase of legal agreements. And it sets an interesting tone for many of the future to happen throughout the Old Testament, agreements of this kind. You start to see kind of a pattern in how they arise. And we actually had a few previously as well. Now Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron, the Hittite, answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites, that is, of the people, not necessarily governmental, of all who went in at the gate of the city. Now, it is most likely that this is a group of the people that live there, the not the government, not necessarily the rulers, but the people who have a say in what is happening in the community. So the best that I'd ever heard of like a good comparison is like a city council, kind of. He goes before this kind of city council, this court, whatever you want to call it. But the people there they have a say. Call it a vote, call it whatever you want. But they have some degree of control as citizens, as people of the area, to decide whether this deal happens and how the deal happens. Verse 11. No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the sight of the sons of my people, I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, the people, not governmental. And he said to Ephron, in the hearing of the people of the land, but if you will hear me, I give the price of the field. Accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. So it's an odd thing, because they're offering this to him, and he wants there to be some solidifying factor. So he keeps pushing back in a polite and respectful way. Ephron answered Abraham, my lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? What is the significance? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weight current among the merchants. Interesting thing there is the shekel was not a coin currency yet. This is when it was weight. It was based on weight, which is according to the weight currently among the merchants. So the weights is like the going rate in weight, rather than an actual type of currency. That didn't come until later. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre, the field with the cave that was in it, and all the trees that were in the field, throughout its whole area, was made over to Abraham, given to him, to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the Hittites, before all who went in at the gate of his city. Again, which is like a way of saying, before all who went in the gate of the city, is before all of the people of the area who had a say in what was going on. They were a part of this deal to some degree. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre. This is Hebron. He really wants the reader to understand where this is. In the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as property for a burying place by the Hittites. A long way to get there. And one of the things that I wonder with all that, and I've never been able to find anything, but I'd also be lying if I said like I spent weeks and weeks trying to figure it out. I'd like to know what the actual significance was. This is one of those things it's mentioned. As we read more into Genesis, we understand, due to the people that get buried there, that it's of some kind of great significance. And you get like fleeting indication as you continue through Genesis. But I just wonder if there was something more to it that perhaps at the time was irrelevant because everybody knew it, which is the case for a lot of things in the Bible. Things are just left out because everybody knew it, without the forethought of like people today would be reading it, wondering what the hell is going on. I wonder if that's one of them, and maybe it's not. It's just something that I've always kind of thought about. Isaac and Rebecca, this is a really important chapter because this adds a hell of a lot of context to this part of the Bible, which then feeds into a lot of the Bible because of Isaac. 24. Now Abraham was old, well advanced in years, which is true. The dude is extremely old. And the Lord had blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. There's a lot here. And hopefully at least one thing you didn't know. A couple things to point out first is that Abraham said to his servant. This is, by definition, a slave, just for clarity, because this is something that there's always argument about and there's always misunderstanding about. Slavery bad, for sure. But slavery is not all created equally. All across the world, all across cultures, especially across time periods, it's not always been the same. It's been very different depending on where you're at. There is depiction of slavery in the Old Testament that is atrocious, really, really bad, very clearly really bad. And then there's a depiction of slavery like this. And like we've already read throughout Genesis, one of the slaves, quote unquote, literally had Abraham's kid. And yeah, it wasn't a super clean process, and she wasn't like really loved and welcomed into the family or anything. But it's just not the same as like what a lot of people think when they think of slave. Still bad, still Old Testament, full of bad slavery. This is not that. This is which is why they translate it most of the time as servant, to show a difference. In the same translation, the ESV, the NIV, whatever, you'll see servant sometimes, you'll see slave sometimes. They're trying to help depict the difference. You could argue it's bad no matter about whatever, but it doesn't make it the same. So here's a great example of it, is that Abraham said to his servant, which is a slave, the oldest of his household, which gives him hierarchy. That's only said because of that. He has a placement in the household that is not that of what you would normally think of as a slave, who had charge of all that he had. So not only is the servant the oldest of the household, which very clearly, because of how the Bible is written, gives him a purpose and a placement that is that not of a slave that we think of today, but also he's in charge of everything. He's in charge of everything Abraham has. And now he's going to be in charge of an extremely important task for Abraham and for Isaac that like you wouldn't just give to anybody. You'd give it to somebody you value, that you trust, and completely. The task he gets, you need to trust him completely. We don't know who it is, though. There are some guesses that it's Eliezer because of a part in 15, but there's no absolute clarity to know that for sure. And then this, which is my favorite part. Put your hand under my thigh, that I may make you swear by the Lord, by Yahweh, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell. But I will go to my country and to my kindred, but will go to my country and my kindred, and take a wife for my son Isaac. Put your hand under my thigh. I want to ask, and I'll wait. Does anybody know what that means? I'm going to guess no. It's just something we read past. But I'm really curious if anybody has looked this up. And if you want to cheat, you could Google it and find it very quickly. But
I've actually never looked it up, so I'd like to know.
okay. I'll wait like 15 seconds for anybody who might know. I heard something way back in my youth about the symbolism and significance of the hand under the thigh ritual. Kind of creepy for today's standards. Yeah, accurate. I'll say that much.
Is it some form of submission?
Not quite. No, I wouldn't say that. No. I mean, I guess that's not true. In a sense, I guess it is. But I don't know if I'd say that was the intention necessarily. But actually, the more I think about it, it's at least a part. Yeah, it's at least a part.
Is it connected to like how you hold on to a turned out pocket in prison, so to speak? Or no?
No.
No, I do know there's a reference. I want to say like in like Psalms or something. Maybe it was Job. No, Psalms. I'm pretty sure. We're just talking about uncovering certain sins about like something about like under the thigh, but it was like pertaining to sexual stuff.
Okay, if it was sexual, then no.
Okay.
I'm here. Graves, good to see you. Ruth said, I've heard some controversial things about the thigh. Okay, so there's a couple of things. So if you look, and again, if you're interested, like do a quick study. It shows up a few times depending on translation. It's definitely been removed from a good amount of them. It did exist. It was there. So it's something that I feel like you should wrestle with. Put your hand under my thigh. What happens after is then he gives this whole spiel about a swearing, which we've talked about previously. But an oath was do or die, man. Like an oath, a shaking of the hands was like, it meant everything. It was to death. That if you did not uphold your end of the bargain, it was to death, which just doesn't exist anymore. But what he's saying is that put your hand under my thigh. He's making a reference to offspring in this context. Rodriguez is right that there are other mentions of it, at least one, that has to do with something sexual. This is not that. The putting the hand on your thigh is a part of the swearing or oath process that if the other party fails to uphold their end, the offspring of that party would be responsible forever. So it's like tying your unborn children into it by putting the hand under the thigh and like putting your hand on, you know, where babies come from. That's what it is. It's a funny thing to like do a little bit of research on. It's context dependent for the most part. But it's not the only place you find it. So there's at least some corroboration that that's what it's in reference to, especially if there's an oath afterward. It was kind of like we know that oaths in the Old Testament are always tied to some kind of symbolic gesture. Almost always there's some kind of symbolic gesture. This is just one of them. And it's just in reference to the offspring or the potential offspring being looped into the oath. That if somebody doesn't uphold it, your unborn children will be in on this as well. And they will be forced to uphold it. That they have a part in it, which is just...
We still have symbolic gestures to this day. Like handshaking is one.
For sure.
We take it for granted.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of my problem with it, is I feel like we have the gestures, but they have much less significance or weight to them. But yeah, I mean, like a pinky swear, like people do that. It's just nobody worries about being killed if they don't uphold a handshake. I mean, in some cultures maybe, but it's probably not the norm. My Bible study says swearing oaths typically involved symbolic acts in the ancient Near East, right? Which it does. And that's another interesting thing to look at if you've never done, is what are all of the oaths in the Old Testament, and then read those sections and pull out what the symbolic gesture was. Because it's not always the same. There's a decent array of different things that they would do. And then some are the same. So that's like a weird, if you're a nerd thing, go look at that. Mikhail said, and guys, the hand was placed under the naked thigh, no clothing, right? There is reason to believe that is true, yes. There is reason to believe that is true. Genesis 47:29, is that another example of a gesture? Let's see. Says, and when the time drew near for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh. Right. I'd want to read the rest of the context. So when we get to 47, we'll take a minute and kind of dissect that one for sure. There's a handful. If you look for it, there's a handful. And if you don't find more than like 2 or 3, switch translations. I'll just stick to handshaking. That's the other super important thing. If you're not finding enough of what you feel like you should be finding, take another translation and do the same thing, and then find another one and do the same thing. And preferably, you're going back in time, translation-wise, publication. The more you feel like you need to refine, because they've obviously gotten worse as time has gone on. So, some would intentionally, some not so much, because they just need to help modern people understand it. And that becomes harder and harder, and you have to bastardize the text more and more. The more you have to do that. So I'm not dogging on it. But the older publications you can find, you'll usually find more of the things that you feel like you should be able to find. Handshaking makes sense. Ghost. Yeah, the handshake, the pinky swear. Even crude things like a blood oath. People cut themselves and like shake hands with the blood. People would spit in their hands. Like I remember guys did that when I was a kid, spit in their hand and then shake their hand, which is the same thing, but I guess added significance to it. Okay, but yeah, I just thought it's funny. I figured it was one of those things like nobody really read into ever. It's an interesting thing. So here's the oath. The oath is happening that I may make you swear by the Lord of God in heaven. The God of heaven and God of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell, but will go to my country and to my kindred and take a wife for my son Isaac. In this time period, in this culture, in the beginning of 3, just keeping in mind, like that is all of creation when they say that. And that's a really common way to say it. The God of heaven and the God of earth is a way of saying like absolutely everything. You don't have to read it so literally. It's just absolutely everything, all that is created, all that does exist.
Joe, it was my understanding that that's kind of what involved like the covenant. So like over and over again, when he says certain things involving heaven and earth, like, oh, I call heaven and earth as witnesses, it's usually in pertaining to something significant like a covenant, because you need 2 witnesses.
Right. I mean, a covenant, an oath, swearing.
Like it's a big deal.
It's a huge
Very
deal.
big.
Right. Yeah, that's an awesome thing to point out. Yeah, it's added significance, which just adds to kind of what we're talking about, where these oaths, these like swearing of people, should be taken as. That's why I always I'm dramatic about it. It's life or death, because the significance is so extremely high compared to what modernity reads this normally as. You have to be in the mindset of what Rodriguez is saying. We're like, this is a really big deal. This is a huge deal.
Yeah, even when you get married, you need 2 witnesses.
Right.
Because of that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a great example too. Is marriage is always written about the same way. And if you really think about what is said at a wedding, it's almost empty today. Like the words are said, but they're empty. And then if you think about those same words during this time period, it's like, holy shit. They take it literally. They mean it seriously.
Still think holy shit. Do you have your minister's manual thing?
What? To not say that?
No, the minister manual where it actually goes over different kinds of marriages and
Oh, the handbook?
Yeah, that one.
I'm sure I have one somewhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it'll give you a template of different service structure. Yeah, I have one somewhere. Yeah. I've never used it for sure. It's too cheesy for me.
Yeah.
For me. I mean, I have all that. Kat has a necklace that I got her that has 4 of my favorite verses that have to do with marriage. Those have been go-to for me. And then the rest of it to me is individual on the couple. What is the couple? Who are the couple? What do they believe? How do they view their marriage? That was kind of always my approach. But yeah, that's funny. If anybody didn't know that exists, pastors have little cheat sheet books for weddings, funerals, the whole 9.
It's for everything, baptisms,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a believer, if you're not a believer, if you live a certain lifestyle, if you don't live it's all there.
Yeah, it's really funny. Not a fan. But I guess for newer people, I guess it helps, Okay, so he big swear, big deal. He doesn't want a wife for his son from the Canaanites. He would like this servant, who he trusts very much, obviously, would like to take a wife for his son Isaac from his country. 5. The servant said to him, "Perhaps the woman may not be willing to follow me to this land." The servant said that. "Must I then take your son back to the land from which you came?" So if the woman doesn't want to come here to Isaac, should I take Isaac there? Abraham said to him, "See to it that you do not take my son back there. Do not take my son back there." He does not want Isaac to leave the promised land. That's what that is he's currently where he should be, where the promise of God brought him. And from what I can tell, do your own research, he doesn't want him to leave the promised land. Otherwise, you're just guessing. But that's a significantly valid reason for why Abraham would not want him to be taken there, or to be taken anywhere outside of where he is right now. "The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, 'To your offspring I will give this land,' the promised land, 'he will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there." So if the woman won't come, you're free. We're done. Your offspring are, all y'all oxen free home base. But do not take him there. He's willing to let the mission go. Just do not take him there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. It's not a great picture, but it's an interesting cultural picture, because what Mikkel said is largely believed, is that the men were not necessarily clothed, or at least Abraham wouldn't have been. Not proven, I don't know that for sure. But there are a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me who say that that's how that was done. So if you need to picture it, there's the picture. It was significant. There was meaning to it. He will send his angels before you, back in verse 7. I wanted to read this. Abraham's theology allowed for a refusal on the part of the woman, whom God, through his angel, would select. The language, his angel, is elsewhere used of the angel of Yahweh out of Exodus, which I didn't know. So that section out of Exodus is 23:20. It says, "Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared." It's also in 23 out of Exodus. It's in 33:2 out of Exodus. And it's also in Judges 2:1-3. So if those are things you care to look at, it's just a rabbit hole. I guess I'll just say that. We don't have a whole. We can come back to it at the end of Genesis if we want, but it's interesting to look through the terminology, the context when it's used, the angel of Yahweh, because it seems to be a different thing than some other contextual uses of an angel before you, or an angel will travel with you, or something like that. I think that's a solid possibility. Okay, what happened? So it's not in reference to the Elohim plural. I'm not sure. I must have breezed past you guys. I'm not sure what you're talking about. For us, it does, but it wouldn't to a hypothetical civilization for the future. Cultural symbols change over time unless they intentionally preserved. Yeah, true. The angel of Yahweh accepted worship. Other angels never did. Yeah, so that's a whole conversation of itself. Is what is the angel of Yahweh? Is it you'll hear it's an extension of Yahweh. So that's why worship is accepted. I mean, I've heard a ton of different beliefs about it. It's one that I have never had like enough to be like, this is what it is. This is how it works. It's just always felt kind of lackluster content wise. Not context. There's decent context. But like total content for me to have a strong belief, I've always lacked. The cloud of witnesses. Did I just breeze past this and not? Or was that in reference to what Rodriguez was saying? Same, I spec things, but I think we were missing something. Right. That's one of those things that I think we probably had. And we just don't.
The cloud
anymore.
of witnesses was relating to the plurality of God. God of heaven, it should be gods because it's Elohim and not El.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, Mikkel.
Yeah, I mean, we were just musing. I don't know.
No, yeah, I'm glad you said it though. Out of 12, or where, Mikkel, did you have Hebrew up? No, I want to look at it. I won't hold us here though.
It's definitely Elohim.
Is it? Okay.
So it's super duper plural, like it shouldn't be rendered God.
And that's 12, right?
Man, this isn't the night.
It's all right. If you find it later,
Wasn't it
throw
like
it out.
angelic hosts or something like that? Just in general?
Or are we talking about where the angel of Yahweh section was? Because that would be up in 7.
When it said
Importance.
To your offspring, I will give this land. He will send his angels, or I'm sorry, his angel before you.
it was about 10 minutes ago. It was scroll up, I guess.
Okay, so 7, the Lord, the God of heaven.
You highlighted it. It said the God of heaven and the God of earth.
Oh, you guys are up in 3. Okay. Yeah, that was the beginning of 3 right here. I wonder if that's always the case then. Yeah, Mikkel just confirmed God of heaven and God of earth. I wonder if that's always the case, because it's true that like this terminology is used extremely often in terms of, like Rodriguez said, weddings, I believe some legal matters, oaths, and swearing. I wonder if it's always plural. This is something I honestly I've never looked at. I have no idea. I'd be interested to know. But I would assume guessing that if it is here, it probably is in those other contexts too. But it
What
would
was
be
the question? Sorry.
if so. They were talking about that. It was Elohim that was used, which would be plural. Which is used. I mean, it's used often, but it's not always used. So I wonder if every time that phrase, the God of heaven and the God of earth, across context, from weddings to swearing to oaths to whatever it's used in, I wonder if it's always plural in Hebrew. It's just something
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know that.
I would just kind of encourage everyone to look it up, because that's how I remember doing the word studies. If you just type in heaven and earth and just look it up in the Old Testament, New Testament, and see when it comes to covenants that are involved, it's a really big deal. So it's pretty possible that Elohim may have been involved. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really.
But Elohim is plural.
I'm sorry. One more time.
You said it's plural.
Elohim is plural, so it should be rendered
Right.
gods of heaven and earth.
That's my assumption. Yeah, you guys would have to look it up, but like I said, it's pretty big.
I just want to know if it's now. It's something I'm going to look at when we're done. I've honestly never looked, or I've never noticed, and now I'm extremely curious.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing that makes it an extra big deal is, like, if you think of God always existing, right? And then you think of us not always existing, but heaven and earth would have been created prior. So it's almost like God is saying, like, hey, since the beginning of time, heaven and earth can confirm X, Y, and Z, and you were created after the fact. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, the Elohim plurality of God, that's a massive rabbit hole.
Right.
It's
right.
never ending. It's
right.
It's interesting. It changes things. To some degree, it changes things. It has to change the way you interpret some things.
Yeah. But in the same vein, we do know that in between us and Elohim, there was a heaven and earth that was created prior to us, but post Elohim.
Yeah.
The morning stars cried out for joy.
Right. Yeah. Which makes the whole, witnessing and all of that more significant. I would just assume.
Isn't it wild that, like, no church, I shouldn't say that. Isn't it wild that the majority of churches on the planet would never entertain this conversation at all? Isn't that scary? Doesn't that scare the shit out of you?
It's polytheism.
Right. Like, who cares? If it's there, it's there. Like, either you're fake, or you're gonna have to figure out how to make this make sense.
I know for
it's wild.
Like, when I would read certain parts of scripture where it would mention, like, God saying something and then adding heaven and earth, adding heaven and earth as witnesses, I was like, oh shit, like, I better pay attention to stuff, because it's no different than, like, kind of like we just discussed, like a pastor giving, some marital vows or baptism vows. Like, it's a very serious thing. So
right,
it's like that whole suzerain vassal thing.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah, it's wild. Patricia, sorry, like, when you say your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, I wonder if that also relates.
Esole. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now I want to look at the Our Father too.
Well, y'all know me. I think that's a law of correspondence verse.
Yeah. Are you guys talking about gap theory, Genesis 1 and 2? Not necessarily, no.
We're talking about vows and promises. Like, it's just like, if someone says something, there's just so much more weight and significance when it comes to a vow or a promise. This is like something that's, like, legally documented.
Right, with actual consequences, which is even different from today. As we enter legal contracts all the time today, there's still just very little consequence in most cases. The consequences of the Old Testament were normally that you would be brutally murdered. That was the consequence. So people took it pretty serious. It was life and death.
Right. So like, if you come across a verse that seems like a promise and heaven and earth as witnesses, then I would bring it up to God. I know I have.
Yeah, it's wildly important.
You're right. Yeah.
It's wildly important for sure. And then the other thing, God the Son, Jesus Christ saves. Your name is so long, but I'm gonna figure out how to say it fast. The other thing that we were talking about when you came in was the plural use. The word Elohim is often used in the Old Testament for God or things surrounding that, or in that context rather, God in that context. Oftentimes it's used. It's not oftentimes. It's plural when it's Elohim. It's not always Elohim that is used. So we're talking about in English here, we just get God like over and over again, and Lord over and over again. Lord is usually Yahweh. God in many cases is Elohim. So we're talking about the plurality of it and what that changes, if anything. How to read that, when to read it, and how often is it Elohim? Because then the actual rendering to English should be the gods, plural, of heaven and the gods, plural, of earth. That's what we were talking about. Mikhail said, God, son of Jesus. We're also discussing the hand under Abraham's naked thigh. Yeah, you missed that. I would rewind and catch that part.
I like what the God of Son Jesus, whatever all that is like that. It's the Godhead as opposed to plural, so we don't like bleed over into like polytheism or anything like that, you know.
Right, which is a potential answer, but at the same time, like you'd hate to just write it off, because just because there's one possible answer doesn't mean that's the answer.
I think for back then, it may have just been a completely foreign concept, not even fathomable. But I think we've been a couple centuries into this where we can kind of grasp a little bit more, and it's a little bit more safe to say. No?
Possibly, for sure. I'm never going to say. I have no idea. I'm very open to...
Same.
Yeah, I'm very open to either. I could see the Trinity deal being the answer for all of it, but I could also see, due to a lot of other things, that maybe not. But it doesn't mean heresy. It doesn't mean that anything else is at risk. It doesn't mean our theology gets effed up. It doesn't mean anything.
Right. Preach that.
Right. It just adds to. And honestly, I think if we were able to figure that out, a bunch of other stuff that we don't really understand and we're kind of coping about would maybe make sense too. Because it would open the door to make it, and maybe not, right. And maybe I'm dead ass wrong, and maybe it's just the Trinity. Whatever, I have no idea. Wouldn't the Elohim be pointing to the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Trinity? As that would be plural, or would it be bigger than that? What I just said. Yeah, it could, that's probably going to be the answer you get 9 times out of 10 from people. I would guess, and I could be wrong, and they can call me an asshole, but I would guess that at least Mikkel and Ghost probably have. They probably see that as a possibility, and they probably see.
I don't think it's different. The Trinity. I think it's
there. It is
angels or sons of God.
Host. Yeah.
Because in Psalm 82, 6 and 7, it says, "You are all sons of God, but you will die like men." So if you will die like men, then you must not be a man. Otherwise, why would you say that?
Right. That's why I think Trinity could make sense, but just because it could make sense doesn't mean it's the answer. I think there's a lot more in the Old Testament specifically that adds to this idea that we've been interpreting other things incorrectly that could make this thing make sense.
Agreed.
I'd just be lying if I said I had it completely worked out. But Patricia,
I'm not solid on it. I have no idea.
Right, but at least there are things like what the verse Ghost just gave that make sense for possibly beginning to make it make sense. But Patricia, if you're interested, bring that to Discord, and I'm sure I would assume Mikkel kind of has a different theory as well, or at least leans towards something other than the Trinity. But that's fundamental, right? Like we talk about a lot of things in the Bible that are wrong or missing or whatever, and I'll call them irrelevant. It's unessential. It's irrelevant. This isn't one of them. This is something that is relevant. It's extremely relevant. That we're lacking some information or some like main function that was once there, seemingly, that has been either removed or lost innocently throughout time. And Ghost just put out that Psalm verse. It's one of many that elude to there being something else, to allude to there being something that we are not understanding probably the way that they did, which should set off some alarm bells. But in Genesis 1:26 says, our likeness and image, and based on revelation, not all the heavenly hosts look like men. There are some trippy creatures in heaven. I mean, true enough, yeah. All right. What time is it? Cool. We are killing it on time. Okay, we left off on 10. So, oh, right, we left off, right? So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning the matter. So agreement made, oath started, and now the servant has to take off to go find the wife, the to-be wife. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master, and he arose and went to Mesopotamia. One thing here that I do want to read, the Hebrew phrase used here, that I'm not going to try to pronounce, does not occur anywhere else in the Old Testament. Though it is paralleled by Padan Aram in Genesis 25, it is sometimes translated as Mesopotamia, which is what my translation used, because it can be understood as Aram of the rivers, or Aram, the land between two rivers, and because the Septuagint translates it as Mesopotamia. So this was liberty taken by the translators. Because of those things, they chose to go with that answer. There's argument, but it makes sense. But just because it makes sense doesn't mean it's true. So it's something to keep in mind. But it does make sense. Who went to Mesopotamia? Probably. To the city of Nahor. This was a city that was associated with either or both Abraham's brothers, Nahor and Abraham's grandfather, who had the same name. Two of the same name. A brother and a grandfather. He had made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of the water at the time of evening, the time when women go out to draw water. This is the picture that I would like you to have, is in the modern day, this could be seen as the equivalent of men going to Whole Foods at 5:30 when the ladies get off work and they're going to go get their kale from the Whole Foods, and men just like sitting outside of the Whole Foods waiting. It's a modern day equivalent. That's what is happening. So he's picked a place where he knows the ladies will be, and he's come there to try to snag a wife for Isaac. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, I want to know that translation now. God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today. This is the first prayer of guidance or success in the Bible. That's it. Welcome. And it begins. God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. So he prays for his success and mission by prefacing it with my master Abraham, showing respect and reverence. And then he prays for Abraham, which is kind of sweet, right? 13, behold, I am standing by the spring water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. He's waiting at the literal watering hole. Let the young women to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have sworn steadfast love to my master. So he has completely laid out what he expects, in a sense, God to do to let him know this is the girl. He expects the woman to say, please let down your jar. That he shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink. And she will say, drink, and I will water your camels. So not only will I provide you drink, but I also provide your camels drink, which is also an indication of the type of woman she is. Let her be the woman that you have appointed for your servant Isaac. So he's laid out the groundwork. This is what I expect to see, to know that she is the one. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master, before he had finished speaking, before he was done, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. Now, real quick, Rebekah's genealogy here from Logos is provided to show that her grandmother was the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, and not a concubine, which is an important note. Rebekah, as Bethuel's daughter, is Isaac's first cousin once removed. I hope that all made sense. We are so on topic. We're mostly on topic. We're doing all right. I'll be a few minutes late. That's not bad. So we get a short genealogy to understand the relation. And there is a relation. Concubine equals side chick. Correct. We've had a good fill of concubines already in this early stage of the biblical account. 15. Before he had finished, Rebekah comes, right? The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden, god damn, who no man had known. In case you are not privy, whom no man had known is a virgin. Interesting note, though, is not often, total lie, take that back. A number of times in the Bible, the word that gets translated, she's a hottie, the word that gets translated to virgin is actually not that, or at least there's an argument whether it was that or not. The Hebrew word here is associated with virginity almost always, but here it's made explicitly clear. So just something to keep in mind. And that goes for Greek too, actually. And in at least one place, it goes for Greek too. And outside of the Bible as well. Hebrew and Greek don't translate properly. They just don't. So this is one to just, I guess, be aware of to some degree. This, because of context, we know for sure. But the word is also used relatively common to depict a virgin. In English, I don't know why we do this. Like, we're so down to completely destroy what Hebrew said when it's unnecessary. But then we choose to use this really old terminology of who no man had known, instead of saying she was a virgin, so that everybody fully understands what is happening. I don't know what the intent is behind that, but it always aggravates the hell out of me. Anyways, she went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, "Please, give me a little water to drink from your jar," which is exactly what he said that he would say. And now he's expecting her to say, "Drink, my lord," which she does. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "What did he want her to say?" "I'll feed your camels too, my lord." "What does she say?" "I will draw water for your camels also." God, is he good? He wasn't even done saying it. And then she just fulfills it. "Until they have finished drinking, I'll water your camels." So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the wall to draw water. And she drew for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. Does he need to? It happened exactly how he said it would happen. And he's still, I don't know if that's true. It seems more like he was staring at her like shocked that this was so easy. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. Is this the girl? Did I find her? It seems fairly obvious that she's doing exactly what he had predicted would happen. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel. I do want to say this. This is not like a wedding ring. This is not even, probably is not even a ring that goes around your finger. There's a lot of commentaries that will tell you this was a nose ring. There's also somewhere in, one sec, let me get it.
Yikes, that sounds like slavery.
No, it was used as jewelry too. But I get why you're saying that, though. I get why you're saying
note?
Yeah, it was used as jewelry too, though. But it's a fair thought, because that was also a use for that. In Isaiah 3, do we have a reference of a nose ring? In Ezekiel 16, we have a reference of a nose ring, and I believe both of those are apart from slavery. The gift that the servant here, Abraham's servant, is giving is supposed to be an indicator of what Abraham has, right? Because marriage is not about love. Never was. It was about circumstances. It was about power. It was about religion, family ties. It was not about love at all, not even a little tiny bit. People would fall in love after, oftentimes, but it was never orchestrated out of love. So the servant brought this ring to give to her, which was a nose ring. Nazim. Nazim is the Hebrew word that is used, if anybody cares to look. It was an indicator of wealth. It was an indicator of status. It's like driving up in a Rolls Royce or something. It makes it very clear to her what he has. Weighing half shekel, and 2 bracelets for her arm weighing 10 gold shekels. This was significant because I know nobody has a normal market value of what these things are. Significant. And said, please tell me whose daughter you are. Because remember, he had been given direction to not bring back one of the wrong daughters, the Canaanites. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? She said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She added, we have plenty of both straw and fodder, and room to spend the night. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord, Yahweh, is what it actually says, and said, blessed be Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness toward my master. It's a prayer of gratefulness. It's an acknowledgement of gratefulness. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsman. Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban, whatever, Laban, ran out toward the man to the spring. Now, real quick on him, the son of Bethuel, Abraham's great nephew, and like Rebekah, you can find this in Logos, and like Rebekah, Isaac's first cousin once removed. Let that sink in. Also, he has superiority in the household in terms of his sister getting married, which is an interesting thing. So we'll talk about that briefly. As soon as he saw the ring, the nose ring, and the bracelet on his sister's arm, and heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, thus the man spoke to me. He went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, come in, O blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels and gave straw and fodder to the camels. And there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. This was a simple, normal practice. There's no significance behind it. We've talked about this before. Most of the Old Testament, unlike the New Testament, there is no religious, spiritual, or any really significance to the washing of the feet. It was just a custom. It was a normal thing people did because their feet were freaking disgusting. And then they'd come inside, and it was a way of it was hospitality. That's it. But there was really nothing else to it, at least not here for sure. Then food was set before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat until I have said what I have to say. He's being a very diligent servant on a mission, and he's kind of killing it so far. But he's like, I'm not even going to eat until I get this sorted out. So let's all talk and get this deal done, because that's what it is. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. Baby girl, he's got it all. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old. And to him, when she was old, is an indication of value and status, because it shouldn't have happened, right? And to him, where the hell was I? My master, when she was old. And to him, there we go. To him, he has given all that he has. My master's made me swear, which is significant, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell. He quoted him perfectly. But you shall go to my father's house and to my clan and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, perhaps the woman will not follow me. But he said to me, the Lord, Yahweh, before whom I have walked, will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son from my clan and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. So either way, he's scot-free, no problem. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if you are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, please give me a drink of water from your jar to drink. He's just he's recounting all of the things. There's nothing new here. And it will say to me, drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, because it wasn't out loud, it was a prayer of sorts. Behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water. I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said to me, the daughter of Bethuel, Naor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelet on her arms. There's your indication. Then I bowed my head and worshiped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me. And if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban, not Bethuel, whose daddy? Not Laban. That's brother. Why is he first? That's not how this goes. People are depicted people are expressed in literary accounts in order of significance or status or hierarchy, depending. But either way, power is first. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, the thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go. And let her be the wife of your master's son. And the Lord has spoken. There's indication here, kind of like Priscilla and Aquila, right? In the New Testament. There's a big argument because of the order that they were depicted in. This is a similar thing. This seems to indicate that brother had actual authority over father in terms of giving sister or daughter away. Just a thing to log away. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord, and the servant brought out jewelry of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. It's unclear whether this is the bride price, which was a thing in case you didn't know. Women costed money back in the day. I'm totally kidding. 100% kidding, but not really. Marriage costs money. And there would be a price that would be paid for the hand of the female in a marriage. Because again, it wasn't about love. It wasn't about either of their consent necessarily. It was about a deal being made for some reason, a specific reason that usually benefited the parents of the newlyweds, right? Isn't all this marriage talk just God planting in his garden, it seems like, generations of gene splicing to make the ideal strain? Yeah, which is a very interesting topic, actually. A very interesting topic. All right, he also gave to her brother, and to also her mother, costly ornaments, which again, it's unclear, but probably this was all a part of the bride price. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. A lot of argument that this is not literally 10 days. That it was likely much longer, because the servant wouldn't have had a problem, probably, with literal 10 days. It wouldn't really make sense. So colloquialism, exaggeration, we see this a lot in the Bible, so it's hard to say. But it's one of these ones that it probably isn't literal, because it doesn't make sense, but who cares, really? After that, she may go. But he said to them, do not delay me. So he's pushing back. Since the Lord has prospered my way, send me away that I may go to my master. They said, let us call the young woman and ask her. And so they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? She said, I will go. So they sent away Rebecca, their sister, and her nurse. This is usually in reference to what do you call it? Not a maternity nurse.
Postpartum,
But yeah, maybe that's it. There's another word for it though, a term.
lactation.
Yeah, basically. It's not the one I'm
Okay.
thinking of, but yeah, that's what it is. So that's normally what this is, except we have no reason to think she's pregnant. So, don't know. It could have just been a person who engaged in those types of things for the family, who was well trusted, assumed that she would need it because she's getting married, and so sent her with.
Yeah, wet midwife. Yeah,
Right.
could be miss. You don't know. Yeah.
Right. So it's just one of those things. 9 times out of 10, when you see this, it's an active wet nurse. It's an active wet nurse was the one I was thinking. But whatever, postpartum, lactation, saying it's all the same stuff. That's usually what it is, and it's usually relatively clear due to context and what's going on. It's not here, so you kind of have to guess, but it makes sense. I mean, she's probably going to need it. So he sent the nurse to it, and Abraham's servant and his men, and they blessed Rebekah and said to her, "Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s," which there is kind of your indication of what kind of nurse it probably was. "And may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him." This is it's a reiteration of what was said about Isaac previously. That's where it's coming from, just so everybody's totally clear. So what's being said about her is what was said about Isaac, which makes sense because they're about to go into union together. Then Rebecca and her young woman, and her young woman arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebecca and went away. Now Isaac had returned from Bir Lahai Roi and was dwelling in Negeb. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. So, meditation. Real super quick, and then I gotta breeze through the rest, and I gotta go to bed. The Hebrew word here is suach. And it's, yeah, perfect. So suach or siach, and I know I'm saying that wrong, so let me put them here, because this is something that I would actually highly recommend you look into. They're both, from what I remember, so somebody definitely fact check me and blast me in Discord, but from what I remember, they're both used to translate to meditation. And one of the things that I looked into a lot when I was going through seminary and then deciding to leave seminary was the mention and use of meditation and a couple other words that are kind of in line with meditation that are verifiably removed from the Bible. And I spent a literal couple of years trying to find why. And it gets so deep though. And so the one thing that completely just blew my mind was when you find some of these old manuscripts, you can literally see in some cases where a scribe was, because all of these were hand copied, right? So a scribe would have his manuscript, his copy, and he'd be copying off of the one that he had next to him. And he'd write in the margin, "You fool, why are you removing this?" And one of the places was where the term meditation was used in Hebrew. The same thing happened for the same English word meditation in the Septuagint, where a scribe was like, in my words, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you altering this?" So and I'm sure that happened with other things too, but this is just one that I super deep dived on, so it's my very narrow view.
Thank you for pointing it out. Yeah.
But it's really, 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 really interesting that it seems as though we've been conditioned to not meditate, and instead we've been conditioned to do what we call praying, as if they're different. But if they are, why are we being like pigeonholed into this one thing that then throughout history became this empty, vacant expression of words, rather than a mindfulness practice where you are meant to literally zone in to God and give yourself to God, like physically, spiritually, psychologically. And instead, it seems like they pushed us into this "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done," which is it's mindless. There's no physical connection. You're not thinking. I did Catholic school. I had no idea what the hell I was saying when I was saying the rosary, but I said every damn word perfectly because you become indoctrinated. And I'm nothing against Catholics. Catholics could meditate better than anybody in the world, I'm sure. There are some of them that do it. But they got really hard pushed on the repetitive, which Jesus said not to, prayer, where you have no thought and it's absolutely mindless. Sorry, big rant, but it's like that's one of the things that I went super deep on. So if you're interested, look at that as Buddhism with insight meditation practice. Meditation in some form is used in every single religion that exists on the planet. We just call it something different. But what every single one of them is doing, even the New Age people that are atheists, they're seeking a connection to the Creator. Call it whatever the fuck you want. Sorry, apologize. Call it whatever you want. Word it however you need to. Cope, whatever you need, baby girl. But what you're doing in every single scenario of this is you are trying to connect your energy with God's energy by different name, by different function, by different practice. But it's all the exact same thing. And I'll leave it at that. So Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. Uh-oh. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel and said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" The servant said, "It is my master." He's not talking about Abraham here anymore. He's talking about Isaac. So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her, so Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Kind of beautiful, kind of sad. She took her veil and covered herself. We have no reason, really, to believe that Israelite females normally wore veils. So the indication, which makes sense in context, is that she was getting married. It's really that simple. I've seen a lot of really stupid arguments about the head covering and the veil from this verse. I think it's asinine. She's literally about to get married. It happens right there. So when she sees her husband to be, she wore the veil. I don't understand the complexity of it. It's very clear in context. My opinion. Okay. I'm very interested in meditation, prayer, deep dive. Just be careful. I should have prefaced all of that with this, and I'll leave you with this because I got to go to sleep. Be really, really, really careful when you look into quote unquote meditation, because I think meditation can become just as evil as it could be good. Like, I think it's one of those things that your intention and what you're actually doing are phenomenally significant. To say it as simple as possible, just be mindful. Also, searching meditation, you're going to find a bunch of really wonky stuff, and you're going to find people who seem to be Christian, and they're just like the super apostles from the Corinthian text, where they look like Christians, they talk like Christians, they act like Christians, from what you can see, and they practice like Christians, but they're preaching an entirely different gospel. Be extremely mindful. What's that?
So just to clarify, is there a, I don't know, a Greek definition that you see in the New Testament of meditation, just so that we can see what its proper context is and how to apply it?
Yeah, you can. I mean, not off the top of my head, no, but yeah, it's okay. Definitely there. So you can find a couple different uses or types of synonymous things with meditation. In Koine Greek, and if you find those will be what was used. I'd have to look is the simple answer, but there were at least 3 to 5 mentions of meditation in the Greek text in the Septuagint that I want to say publications in the 90s had, and I think some of them still have it. But I'd have to look. I'd have to like give it an hour and pull up some of that stuff. But I think you guys are good researchers. So if it's something you really care about, look at different Koine Greek terms like meditation. Find all those, and then start cross-referencing each of those terms. I think there's three. There's like three. I think. But take those different synonymous things with meditation in Greek, and cross-reference them with whatever translation you're already using. And if
I do,
go ahead.
I was able to quickly reference one in Hebrews, and it's in Psalm 19, verse 14.
Psalm will have a few.
Okay, that's good.
Psalm and Proverbs too will have a few.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But it just sounds pretty basic, though, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
Meditate.
I'd go outside of the poetic books.
Okay.
Personally, I mean, look at them too. But the tougher is the Greek. The tougher is the Greek.
Yeah. Right. Which is
It's harder.
why I was in No Testament. Yeah.
It's hard. There's a few terms that are meditation is one of them, but there's a few Greek terms for it. Like love for us is love. Love in Greek is all these things. So same thing for meditation. There's several different versions of it. Take those, cross-reference with the text you're already using, the translation you're already using. See if any of them pop up, because maybe they do. If not, grab a couple random translations from the 90s and cross-reference it with those. You can definitely absolutely find it, because I spent literal years doing it, and I was able to find a lot. It just took some time. And if it's something, I'll put it on a list for myself that slowly, I'll try to uncover some of that stuff. I'm sure I have a bunch of notes and things like that. But it's really, 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 really interesting. It's something I got extremely deep into. If someone asks you, Joe, how do you meditate and why do you meditate? How would you answer as a Christian? Meditation to me is an emptying of oneself. So I want to be careful with how I say it. I have a hard time praying like you hear a pastor pray on a stage. I don't have a hard time doing it in a corporate setting. So like we used to pray on these streams, and it's something that I'd like us to get back in the habit of, but we've been trying to figure out like the prayer section of Discord, because we had a system and the system broke. All beside the point though. But I used to pray at the end of the streams. I have no problem with that. I feel very comfortable doing that. I have a hard time doing it alone, because it's a selfish thing. And it's more complicated than that, but I struggle with it. So for me, what I like to do is I want to believe God because of like a connection, not because of something being answered, not necessarily because I asked to be shown something. So show me the thing. I have a really hard time with being like, I mean, you guys know, I think we are completely insignificant, and I take flack for it. I was just talking to Kat about this last night. I think us on this planet, in this body, could not possibly be more insignificant. I think there is something so much larger going on that we just need to make it through this to be passed on to the next level, where significance begins to build. But I think where we are now is as insignificant as it could possibly be. So I have a hard time being like, God, please help me and my family get this. Blah, 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 blah. I can't do it. I can't do it. So instead, I want to know God. Like, I want to understand what's going on. I want to be clued in. I'd like to be useful. What does my family need? Blah, blah, blah. So personally, I just try to empty myself. I don't think. I just sit in like total silence. I hope for a download is the easiest, simplest way to say it. I should have just said that. I sit, I shut the hell up, and I hope for something to be downloaded. And I try as best as humanly possible to have no preconceived anything in my head, so that I don't twist something that I get.
Joe, do you ever fast?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I have.
was curious.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Honestly, I just suck at it because.
Well, I mean, we all do.
Right,
We all
but
do.
for selfish reasons, for totally
yeah.
bad reasons, I suck at it.
I love wine. Ask Mikkel.
Yeah, I have a similar thing. Yeah, well, like I work out, I enjoy it. It keeps my head clear. When I don't eat, I feel like I deflate, and it makes me feel just like a loser. So it's a totally not okay reason not to do it. But that's the truth of why I don't do it often. But yeah, I think fasting is incredible, and I think it it's an extremely intense version of meditation. It's a super
Right.
intense version of it. Yeah,
I
For-
brought it up. Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of it, as long as you do it carefully. I don't know, Elle, I hope that answered your question. It was a terrible kind of rant of it. The best way is I shut the up and I hope that I understand something. That's meditation to me. You can do it a million different ways. You can put on rain music. You can, Kat and I sometimes would listen to like a sleep meditation, but it's not spiritual. It's like somebody talking you to sleep. But it's just you're meant to empty your brain and just try to receive. We're constantly, especially me, because the way my brain works, I'm constantly output, or intake information, listening to things all the time. I have headphones in my ears 24/7, intaking information all day long. So meditation for me is shut the hell up, take the thing out of your ear, and suffer in silence. That's it.
Yeah, presenting the question and then just leaving it alone,
Right.
trusting that it's being questioned and in the process of being answered.
And I try even no question a lot of the time. Just shut the fuck up. No intention,
yeah.
none. Just like whatever you want. If I'm supposed to know something, maybe I just need to shut the hell up and know nothing, but just shut up and not listening to anything, and just introspect. I try to leave it totally blank, so that whatever's supposed to happen happens. I've had the greatest success with that. I feel like I've gotten more clarity from that than anything else. But sometimes I definitely go in with like right now we have a bunch of things going on for us that are wild that we'll actually talk to you guys about probably in the next couple weeks. But crazy stuff, wild, crazy, horrifyingly scary, but awesome stuff. So it's like, sit down, shut up. I have this thing on my mind, and I hope that whatever I'm supposed to be doing or whatever might happen, that I get some clarity and data downloaded to me for.
Right, exactly.
But it's super hard. Meditation is hard. But there's no woo-woo to the stuff that I do, Elle. It's
Right.
very much just trying to be open. If you ask me, I would recommend seek and study Mahayana branch of Zen Buddhism for more of a philosophical approach to contemplative insight meditation practice, again, as a guide to meditate on God. That's great advice. Buddhism is awesome.
Yeah, everyone's different. I don't know that there's a formula.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I think it's extremely personal. Everybody kind of functions different. Also, thanks for answering. I don't personally like the word download. It's very borderline schizo. Obviously, no offense, but I appreciate the answer. Hey, well, teach their own. You know, teach their own. I get that. Meditation is a built-in function of our brains. We are wasting an important feature if we don't take advantage of it. That's well said. Yeah.
Yes, those.
That's super well said. And I think that's what we've been conditioned to do, which I am guilty of 100% of the time, is you're either outputting something, talking, thinking, something is coming out of you, rushing out. And if not, you're intaking something, looking through social media, listening to YouTube, listening to music, listening to somebody talk. It's like very few people in our age will just sit in silence and even think. Just think. But beyond that, sit in silence and refuse to think. That's like unheard of.
Yeah, but I think God honors like the searching, and I think he tries to like extend our way of like thinking and processing and receiving information. So
For sure.
whether it's through, I don't know, giving you a song or a scripture or a visual, you know, like we're in September. Maybe he keeps giving you something with like, I don't know, pumpkins or hay, something to do with harvest, and then that maybe speaks to you about something like, I don't know.
You mean like an
As-
input? So like a song comes in, or you hear it on a TV show multiple times, or like where God shows you something through inputs, not silence.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
can I give a quick example?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I had major surgery. You guys know I have surgery all the time, but the first time I had major surgery was in August of 2018, And I remember I had run out of all of my financial like resources, and this was October. And for some reason, I kept getting like the vibe of like, I don't know how to, maybe vibe is the best word I can say. I'm sorry. Of like provision. And like, for some reason, I just kept thinking or seeing like signs of fall and like, I don't know how to explain it, but like money or resources. And sure enough, in the middle of October, I had received a letter. Guys, don't get mad at me for saying this, okay? It just is what it is. But I had received a letter stating that there was an issue with my child support and that I needed to contact child support. So, anyways, I still couldn't drive, and one of my friends drove me over there because I was still healing from surgery. And I had gotten the impression that there was going to be a lot of financial gain very recently in the fall. That's all the kind of download that I got, so to speak. So I went to the child support office and they told me, you have a balance. I was like, of what? And I wasn't healed yet. So I either needed to get healed or get a lot of money. Those were my only two options. And the lady was like, oh, there's $18,000 that you have for balance. And I remember like just kind of being in denial. And I was like, look, lady, I'm having a bad day. There's a lot going on. You mean 1,800? And she was like, no, 18,000. And also, there's been a reevaluation in your case. So you're supposed to be getting double of what you were originally getting. And that ended up being true. And it happened in the fall. It happened mid-October, but I started seeing signs of it in like July or August. But again, that's kind of like being part of that. I think for me was fasting and just being in tune of like how God is speaking, trying to speak and receive that language accordingly, if that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe it's not crazy.
Yeah. So then like my perspective would be, or not perspective even, like a thing I would think about if it was me was, would it happen anyways? Because that kind of differentiates. It doesn't make it invalid by any means whatsoever, but it's, I look at the two things differently. We're like, if I practice, let's call it prayer so people don't get upset, but meditation, prayer, mindfulness, whatever, all the same thing, trying to connect with God. If I practice that thing, can it cause things to happen that otherwise wouldn't happen? Versus like whether I meditate, pray or not, does God have this plan and it's going to happen regardless? And maybe just like in your case, what it sounded like, you kind of got ahead of it, where you had a feeling, you understood, you saw signs, but would it have happened anyways? It sounds like probably, because external things were happening.
I mean, it may have been like prolonged, because I know for me, like I was literally, I feel really bad for saying this, but I feel like I can be a spoiled brat when it comes to God and how I talk to him. Like, oh, I can't do this. And that's not my character. That's not my demeanor with anyone else. Please knows that. But I do know like what kind of set it off is I received a letter from child support initially saying that there was issues to my account. And I chose to, go and do more research and kind of check it out within 48 hours of getting that. Maybe I would have waited longer initially, but because of it, it was literally an answer to prayer, because was like crying and screaming to God, like, hey, you need to either miraculously like pay my bills within 72 hours or heal me so that I can work.
Yeah, that's different then. That's different. So that what I said wouldn't apply, because you prayed or you meditated, you became aware of something, or at least had a feeling, or whatever you want to call it, and it caused you to do something. And then in you doing something, it kind of starts this effect of the things happening. So that I always look at those types of things in like kind of that spectrum of, if I pray or meditate, maybe thing happens, or whether I pray or meditate, thing will happen anyways. And then maybe it's kind of a mix of the two, where maybe I'll learn something that will cause me to then act, and or a response to my act will then happen that otherwise wouldn't have happened should I have not acted, and I would not have acted had I not prayed about it. There's like, there's different trajectories, but because I believe personally in free will, I don't believe God is a puppeteer and I'm a little puppet doing whatever he wants. I believe there's absolute agency in life, which is why I take very serious like what I do with my time and what like our family goals are and what my plans are for us, because I don't believe any of that shit is going to happen for me. I believe I can sit here and be a lazy asshole and my family will suffer and we're not going to go anywhere, or that I can try to do a million different things and fail and fail and fail and figure it out until I figure it out. And it's all action. And same with family. Like I could be good enough for Kat to love me and stay here and be a part of the family, and she'll probably stay and like things would be fine and whatever. Or I could kill myself trying to consistently be better and take inventory every time I do something that isn't quite right or doesn't work or wasn't the best thing to do, and pray about those things and try to get guidance or clarity on those things, and then action, and hopefully she will do a reaction, and then you move in lockstep forward. I view all of life like that, where you're only going to go where you go because you did something, and not so much because shit just randomly happens to people. I've never experienced that, so I'm sure it happens to some people, and lucky you. That's not been my experience. So my prayer is always predicated on those beliefs of my prayer is either going to cause something to happen, which I think is the least likely outcome because I just haven't experienced it. Otherwise, my prayer is going to cause me to realize an action I can take that will cause something to happen, or my prayer will completely push me into doing something entirely that will then start a chain of reactions of actions. And then at the end of it, either way, I feel like, well, that's probably what God wanted. And we're living that out right now, heavily, massively. And it's the chain effect of not understanding what's happening and holy shit. But like, I know by the end of this, I'll understand why it's happening and I'll be like, got it. So along the way, I'm just going to try to keep an open mind and meditate and like, please, for the love of God, tell me what I'm supposed to do. What is going on? How can I be? Yeah. No, I totally get it.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer healing if I completely to be able to work and kind of get things done. I think that's kind of where, when it comes to meditation, you kind of get in alignment in what he's doing and what he's saying and go in that direction. I mean, I could have waited a long time, right, to kind of go to the support office and get the check, because it just so happened I got the check in time to pay the rent, which wouldn't have happened if I would have delayed. So
you took action. You didn't have to, but you felt you should, and you did.
Right.
And because of that, something happened. But I believe there's a world where you're like, I'm gonna watch Netflix instead. Like it'll get figured out. And then, but for real, like that's what people do. It's like, it is what it is. It is what it is. It'll happen. It'll come. And then maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't.
I mean, maybe it's like dude, I was like homeless last summer for like 6 months.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
But even then, there are people without a home who are not, call it late, call it whatever. They're just people who would not make that choice. And I think for people who feel like they have some kind of connection to God or whatever you want to call it, and they get this agonizing feeling or this just something that makes you be like, I have to do that thing, or that's the thing I'm supposed to do, and then later you see why. But it's just, that's not everybody, man. And I think about that all the time. So that's not everybody. A lot of people will just let it go. I am super late and my eyes are slowly dying, so I'm gonna go to bed. But this was this was good. Yeah, I love you guys very much. Please remember to vote in the poll on Discord in the announcements thing, so that we can try to add a third day, because I'd really like to bring back that topic discussion, because I really miss it. It used to be a lot of fun. It was really good. It was very eye-opening, and I feel like we've got a decent new group here, so I think it'd be a good thing to just like kickstart hard as hell, and then add another day. I think it'd be good. So take a look at the Discord poll in the announcement section. Vote on it only if you plan on coming, not just for funsies. Vote on this poll if that works for you, and you will also come more than 50% of the time. please. Beyond that, love you, love you, love you. We'll see you Thursday for Adam and Eve, and then I'm sure we'll talk in Discord till then. Everybody have a lovely week. Good night.
Bye, y'all. I love you. Good night.